To welcome everybody here and everybody on Zoom. For those who are willing and able, please stand up and wave to the people on Zoom. If you haven't already done it, please turn your phones on silent. And if you have an announcement or a joy or concern, it should be in my hands right now. Anybody out there postponing? Up, one coming up.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. Okay, and I think that's a joy. If you're new here, please ask any one of us how to get on our mailing list and how to get our newsletter. The usual people to ask would be Becky, Tanner, or Deborah Smith, but neither is here today, so you can ask any of us and we'll pass it along.
Yes, we'll tell you.
So today I'd like to welcome in particular Lou Seiler. She has been attending Sky Island for a while, first on Zoom when she lived up in northern Arizona, and now she's in Bisbee, and she'll be playing for us from time to time. So.
I've also been to UU churches around the country, or fellowships.
And she says she's been to UU churches and fellowships around the country.
Yeah.
All right, we have a few announcements. The 15th Annual African American Read-In will be held on Sunday, February 18th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. at St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church on North Carmichael here in Sierra Vista. You may attend in person or by Zoom. Anyone who wishes to register to be a reader or to join by Zoom will need a QR code, so let Wally Hoggett know. And we have registration forms if you want to be a reader also. Okay. For those of you in Cochise County Voting District 1 who would like to meet a Democratic candidate for the upcoming supervisor election, Teresa Jane Walsh will be at a meet and greet on February 13th. That would be Tuesday, I think. Tuesday at 3 p.m. at a residence here in Sierra Vista. Those who may be interested, see Pat Arona after the service today, and he'll give you the details. The repeatedly delayed Whitewater Draw hike is rescheduled for the 22nd. That's a Thursday. We'll be leaving from church at 10. If we have a big enough group, we'll do the potluck. So I hope that the weather will cooperate with us this time. And Circle Suppers. We have not had enough people sign up for Circle Suppers yet to get one organized. These are events that you have in your home, at a restaurant, or here at the church where you simply host a meal. It can be a potluck. You can do it any way you want. The idea is to interact with people that you don't socialize with on a regular basis so we get to know each other better. So please sign up. And finally, Tina's office hours will be Tuesday, February 13th from 1 to 3. She's willing to meet with you at other times. If that's not convenient, just give her a call or a text and make an appointment. Are there any other announcements? Okay.
So welcome to worship today. The theme is love means giving everyone a voice. Obviously in the electoral process, also in our own lives, also in our own communities, also learning how to organize in smaller units between votes. Our mashup this week is, of course, this month is African American History Month, Black History Month. The 30 Days of Love given to us by the Unitarian Universalist Association this week is talking about resilience, democracy, and electoral justice. And the Baja Four picked love for February for obvious reasons, right? And I think they all go together well. Giving people a voice is a very important form of love. But today, after worship, is about giving everyone who wants one a marker. We have Valentines out there. Now, our children can create their own Valentines. I just made some outlines. But I bought all of you cards, and I circled the names I want to send them to, about 20. So I hope you will start a card to Gwyn Boucher, or you'll start a card to Ellen Taylor, who's actually on Zoom right now. Hi, Ellen. But, in rehab, so can't be here. There'll be stickers and cards, and you can look at the list of names I hope we will make cards for. If I'd had a little more time, I'd have written, Dear Gwyn, and you'd have known this is his card. But if each one of you takes it upon yourself to adopt a person like Jean McKean, who's also here, hi, then we can send people cards. I'll send them out tomorrow. Okay? Does that make any sense? Clear as mud? Part of giving everyone a voice is also showing that they are listened to, that they matter, that we see them, that we hear them, even if they haven't been able to show up in the building for church. So, I don't know if you, Freya, would like to make a card with dough. Yeah, you want to go make some cards? Yeah. Yeah. I thought that would be more fun than here. Bye-bye. She's going to go out there where all the cool supplies are. So I'm going to ask you a question I want you to meditate on, a couple questions. And Lou is going to play music while you meditate about it. First of all, I want you to think of a time you heard your own voice. I know sometimes it comes as a flash, an aha. I don't mean that really, really mean negative voice, but sometimes there's a very truthful, not always comfortable voice, right, that speaks up and says, well, this is why this is happening in your life. Maybe you should try something different. And sometimes it comes slowly, right? You realize you have some wisdom, and over the years, you could listen to yourself. That's the first question. And the second one is, did anyone else ever listen to your voice, and could you actually do something with them about it? So close your eyes, get comfortable, feel the seat, sit however you want, fall asleep, whatever. Yes. And have you ever heard your own voice? Has anyone else ever heard it? And did you ever get to act together on that? Thank you all.
The chalice lighting comes from May Our Voices Be by Matthew Rosen, author, stay-at-home dad, and member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto. If another strains to breathe, may our voices be the gentle rise and fall. If another chokes on tears, may our voices be an opening for hope. If another has forgotten, may our voices be a memory upwelling. If another is adrift, may our voices be the calling of community. Let us begin worship together by lighting this chalice and calling all into community. We are a caring congregation and share what gives us joy and what weighs heavily in our hearts. I will read the joys and sorrows I have here. Are there any more back there? You can put them in chat on Zoom and speak up when I let you know. I will put stones in the water to represent the joys and sorrows that we share. So Roland Bockhorst spent a few days in the hospital this week with a septic joint, and we're really grateful to the free thinkers who forced him to go to the emergency room last Sunday. Ellen Taylor is in rehab at the Haven here in Sierra Vista after breaking her ankle and having surgery on it. And from Tricia, she's grateful for having the trip to Whitewater Draw rescheduled again, but thankful for the rain. And also tomorrow, February 12th, is the 115th anniversary of the founding of the NAACP.
And I just have a couple from the Zoom. Carolyn Cook, who moved to Oregon, it's a joy that she's on Zoom with us. Ellen Taylor, who's in rehab at the Haven, is on Zoom with us. And a couple joining us from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Susan and Jerry O'Brien. I believe you might have a joy. They said, "That was extraordinary. Thank you so much to the pianist." Giving people a voice is not just good practice, especially for Unitarians, Universalists who claim we believe in that first principle that all human beings have worth and dignity, which probably means listening to them and hearing them and allowing them a place to speak. It's just really good theology, and it really makes a lot of sense. And there's research that shows that if you give older adults, like Ellen Taylor right now, staying in rehab, she's pretty patient with all that's going on around her, but if she had to live there long term, it's good to give her lots of choices. Like if she doesn't like the meal, she can order something else. She can have different clothes to put on. And over and over again, it's been shown that people age better if they have that sense of agency, if they can make choices, and if they can make it several times a day, because you can lose that sense of agency pretty fast, right? Any one of us who's been in the hospital? Yeah, you understand that, right? What's really interesting is that the Journal of Applied Gerontology just had a study that shows caregivers and family members feel better if their loved one has choice. That's how powerful it is in our lives. And we know how important choice is, and having the power to vote in terms of having voice is important in this country. We really weren't a democracy. We're not a perfect one. We're not really there yet. But not till 1965 and the Voting Rights Act, right? I mean, then we started to try to protect the rights of every person in this country, every adult who hasn't been incarcerated, every adult who can get to a polling station, the right to vote. We know that in recent years that has been encroached on. And Zolani, no, what is his name? His middle name is Zolani, Kendi. Ibram Kendi has a wonderful podcast, and he was interviewing Ari Berman, who is the journalist who examines voter suppression. And together they talked about some of the trends, some of the ways we justify voter suppression is to really play up voter fraud, which is not big in this country anymore. But for purposes of voter fraud, when you sign a petition, as I did yesterday, they have to have this little hole cut out in the plastic, because if you sign on the line, that signature is no good. And overwhelmingly, the people who have to get provisional ballots are people of color, and those ballots are overwhelmingly thrown out. I know that in 2016, there was one voting place for I think it's 16,000 people who live in Douglas, Arizona. And don't call me a conspiracy theorist, but there must be something to do with the fact that they vote a certain way there, unlike most of Cochise County. But it happens across the board. We try to stifle the voice of voters in this country and each other if we don't like what you have to say. Kendi found a video footage of the American Heritage Foundation early in the 80s, late 70s. Their founder said, "We don't want everyone to vote." I mean, quite frankly, when everyone can vote, conservative values are voted out. He had a plan to make changes. And later on, when some of their suppression happened, one of the up-and-coming young members said, "Yeah, nobody noticed. We just made it harder. We made people have to wait in long lines. We made it so they couldn't vote early, but no one was paying attention." So we have to pay attention, don't we? No matter what party we're part of, we have to pay attention so that all of us have that voice. Interestingly enough, voting and being able to vote actually makes us healthier. I mean, that's not really a surprise, right? If you are a person who lives in poverty, no matter what your color or your cultural background, you are going to be facing more health risks. And if you can vote in people who provide a better environment around you, better health care, better schools, you will be healthier. Dr. Brenda Williams, who has worked for 30 years as a doctor in the community, a small community in South Carolina, talks about how, you can be wealthy and have high blood pressure and heart disease and be immunocompromised, but it's going to happen to you much younger, much more frequently if you can't vote and you can't get health care and you're under constant stress. One of her ways of handling health care in her poor community is to go to people's houses. She shows up to do her visits there because she says, seeing someone's house, you can feel the drafts. Most of them are mobile homes, and you can feel where the wind gets in. You can see that there's no light for the kids to work by at night because the houses are so old, many of them burn down because the electrical wiring is faulty. So the kids can't do their homework at night. And she says, every time I visit, after we've done the assessment and we figured out if they need an x-ray or blood work or some other lab, I ask them, are you registered to vote? And if they aren't, I explain why they might want to be. And what an impact it makes on their sense of power, on their sense of voice, and on their community, right? And so she always asks that. It's important to vote, but it's also important to act outside of elections, right? We have them pretty frequently, but we also can do some organizing more locally more of the time. We could go celebrate with the NAACP that it's just met 115 years. There are opportunities this month in this town to go to events with the NAACP and learn about what is of concern to African Americans in this community. If you go to the Martin Luther King Day events, you realize we have a lot of African Americans in this community, and they're pretty amazing. And they have amazing fraternities and sororities and ways to build themselves up. And you do not want to miss. I finally got to go in person last year, the read-in that we did last year, reading literature from African American writers. One year I joined on Zoom. That was a big mistake, because I was one of the big faces up on the screen. But if you go in person, you will see how many little kids are there hearing voices out of their tradition, hearing voices we still need to hear, letting them know that their voice matters. Wally read last year, Carolyn read last year. Any one of us is invited to read out of African American literature if we contact them ahead of time and let them know what it is. There are so many ways we could reach out and do some organizing in our community. Now, the person who's in charge of UU the Vote this year, her name is Nora Rosman. She used to organize UU the Vote in Wisconsin, but now she's going to do the whole of the UUA. She thinks that organizing is what makes a difference in our world. She says the core truth I'm reckoning with this year is that democracy, the promise of our elected officials being direct and accountable tied to us, their electorate, has always been aspirational, right? It's never been a completely direct connection. Our ability to have voice has never been perfect. And I acknowledge the fear many of us hold that the threads of democracy we have might fully unravel at any time, at any generation, right? We'll continue to fight and build the power of the working class, multiracial majority to exact wins from people in power. Because how many people in power of whatever party are older white men? Not that I have anything against you, right? But it's not really representational of this country, now is it? She says, organizing is where we draw hope and build long-term power. It's where we invest in each other and our communities through relationships and partnerships with grassroots organizations. Organizing is where we move toward the aspiration of representative democracy and a place where local but consequential change happens. So yes, we can organize for the big picture, but we need to do things here in our towns, in our counties. We even come from different counties, right? We can work together. And Luke Bretherton, who is a London-born British author and theologian, looks at the moral, political questions that have to do with democracy and keeping it strong. He talks about 3 things that are important to do when we organize. I mean, most of all, it's about building relationships with other people. And you have to listen, number 1, to people different from yourself. If you're honoring democracy, respecting the dignity of every individual, having dialogue to listen to them, that is the first cornerstone of democracy. How easy is it to listen to the people in our lives who are very different from us? Very difficult, and very difficult right now, but incredibly important. And I think I've said this multiple times. There are kind of 2 reasons I still work in hospice. They need a Spanish speaker, and I work with people who are a mission field for me. After 11 years, if they pester me about how they're going to vote, I can talk back, right? We have to listen and talk and be there for one another and start to see other human beings as human, not as those horrible them who vote the wrong way, who live in the wrong place. I find myself doing that too, right? But doesn't it humanize it if you start to understand why they might vote that way? If you're curious about these crazy beliefs they have? I mean, some of my beloved hospice coworkers have very odd beliefs for very loving nurses, right? And I have watched them grow, sorry, how very elitist of me, grow in their beliefs about how to work with trans people and people who are, have different, who are non-binary and who have different sexual preferences. I've seen them really grow from contact and humanizing the other. And maybe they are humanizing me. Maybe contact with them helps me understand why people are the way they are as well. So first, we have to listen to people who are different from us. That's the first part of organizing of any kind. 2, we have to remember, democracy does not just happen, right? Martin Luther King Jr. used to say that the arc of history bends towards justice, but we remember that we have to do the bending. It doesn't just happen by itself. We have to speak up as ordinary people. Notice when rights have been taken away. Find a way to stand up to that. And nobody is too little or too old or too tired or too cold or too wet to not stand up. And then we have to do shared action. You can listen and you can organize, but you really have to act. So we have to figure out ways in our little place here we can make a difference, right? Keisha Crum, who was one of the people I listened to, grew up in Wichita, Kansas, a young African-American girl who now works in Cleveland organizing with churches and nonprofits. And she said the African-American church she grew up in gave her agency and joy, but not a lot of power. At some point, we have to unite our voices to have more power. And we have to figure out what in our life talks. Do we have money? Do we have connections? We can just use everything to try to make a difference where we are now. Wouldn't it be great if our high school had counselors for every kid? They do now, but it took a while. Wouldn't it be great if the buses in this town actually ran and picked up students every day now? There is a bus that is late for our kids. These are minor things, but they're things I think we could address and take on. So I just want to remind you what NASA said. Organizing is where we draw hope and build long-term power. It's where we invest in each other and our communities through all the relationships in our lives. I want you to take a moment to think about the many ways you're connected. For some of us here, we might have work, we probably have family. Church is our third place, another place we go to have community. So many people I know don't have a third place. They don't have a way to build up community and connection. We are so blessed that we have each other, right? But beyond it, what fourth places do you have? Are you part of a quilting group? Are you part of an exercise group? Who here goes to Zumba? And boy, Zumba people are like a cult, right? And I know some of us go to yoga, some of us meditate, and some of us are active in other organizations. Some of us stay here for many hours every Sunday going to free thinkers. There are many other connections we have. We have this possibility to be a ripple effect in our community. I want us to build our structure. I want us to listen to each other, even when we're different. I want us to try to find ways to work together. So, I don't know, does anyone have an answer to the questions I asked earlier?
I'll get louder like I did a few days ago. What embarrassed me was that I immediately, okay, so we went to Cochise College, we put up the table, we spent the morning making signs saying that this congressional committee that was coming was a hatchet job. Basically, we said it more politely and more politically. But we made all of these signs. Of course, it was cold, it was windy. The table didn't blow over, but the signs did. Nobody would even come over and talk to us. But what was embarrassing was, we walked up there, we would put the table up next to the building so that we could see into the windows to see the congressional people doing their little thing. And we were kicked out of there, and we were told that we had to go back about half a block to a little concrete circle, and that was the only legal place where free speech under the First Amendment is permitted on Cochise campus. You do not tell something about that to me because, you know, I was an attorney for most of my life. Another bad confession, huh? But anyway, so finally this woman administrator came out because I had stomped in to the middle of a group of men, you know, big men wearing all sorts of battle gear and carrying guns and stuff. And I said, "We're going to have a talk about the First Amendment, guys. It's school time." Anyway, we finally retreated because it was either that or getting thrown out physically. And we sat there and we froze. But I went home so full of joy and pride that I had not allowed that to happen without registering a strong dissent. So that's it.
Sally, you and Ken need to let more of us know, so more of us can freeze with you.
We are going to be ready next time.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? I mean, I can't top that, but all right. Well, thank you, Sally. That was
When I had the clinics, I used to get quoted a lot for things I'd say when I was giving public speaking. And one of the things that went awry all the time was, I would say, in terms of public health, the international border is an imaginary line. And it is. The vectors that carry disease don't stop at your local border patrol station. But when I would get quoted, what they said was, Dr. Ryan says the international border is an imaginary line. Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you all.
As we mark the ending of our service by extinguishing the flame of this chalice, hear these closing words by the Reverend Dr. Stephen J. Crump, Minister Emeritus of the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge, where he served as senior minister for 36 years until 2018. That which is worthy of doing, create with your hands. That which is worthy of repeating, speak with a clear voice. That which is worthy of remembering, hold in your hearts. And that which is worthy of living, go now and live it now.